Hello, welcome back to the channel 12 Step Guide with Troy. Today we're doing Alcoholics Anonymous Step 4, Column 5. Now the title's changing to Our Resentments, Mistakes, or Harms List. And if you don't understand how that changed, likely it's because you didn't see the previous videos. I'm particularly concerned about someone coming on today, seeing this video developed at this late stage and trying to do their fourth step based on this. That brings a joke to mind. There's three kinds of people doing the steps: the person that makes things happen, person that waits for things to happen, they're stuck on step one, the person that says, "What happened?" If you tried to do a step four based on the information today, somebody's going to get hurt, but you're going to be at the bar drunk and you're not going to know what happened or why. You're certainly not going to be able to teach what happened. By all means, see what's said today, but don't start your fourth step from here, please. Go on back to the first video and see each one. Keep yourself safe, your family safe, and the rest of us safe too. So we're going to start. I'm not going to recap. We're going to start right on the directions for column 5 today. And there was a lot of information I've produced in the last one, so hopefully I can clear some of that up for you today. So I'm going to target the directions specifically first for column 5, and then we're going to recap and we're going to review. So this would be in the original book, page 79, maybe page 66 in the newer book. Anyway, so there's 2 points where it says, one, it says we turn back to our list. I'm not reading that just now. The second one down, referring to our list again, putting out of our minds the wrongs others had done. Now we're on step 8 here. In step 4, we resolutely looked for our own mistakes. That word is specific, a mistake. You're looking for a mistake, and we're going to define that out more. It's important, this distinction. That's column 4. And in column 4, he says, where had we been selfish, dishonest, self-seeking, and frightened? We covered that in the last video. Though a situation had not been entirely our fault, we tried to disregard the other person involved entirely. So we're just trying to focus on ourselves here. What part did we play? Now here's a new question. This is column 5, and it's blended in the same paragraph, so it could easily be missed. Where were we to blame? A mistake is different than a blame. So now he's asking in column 5, where were we to blame? The inventory was ours, not the other man's, the other person's. When we saw our faults, we listed them, our faults. We're describing a fault, and that's different than describing an individual. We placed them before us in black and white, put it on paper. We admitted our wrongs honestly and were willing to set these matters straight. Now, that word willingness is something we're going to develop along the way here. So let's take a look, and I'm going to operate now out of the book I wrote in 98. I covered it the last time. I'm going to use a specific example out of the Alcoholics Anonymous Big Book, only it's going to be more developed. So if you're operating out of the Alcoholics Big Book there, and the example, Mr. Brown told my wife of my mistress. And as we developed it out more, it likely affected his self esteem, security, ambitions, personal relations, acceptable and hidden sex relations. Column 4, likely selfishness, dishonesty, self seeking, and frightened. So now what about column 5? Our fault. Well, in simplest form, he cheated on his wife. So right now, what was his fault? The fault. See, the mistake, you can be selfish, dishonest. That was a mistake. You shouldn't have been. Well, that can be corrected. If you can't identify how it happened in step 5, when you formulate an apology or try to not do it in the future, it's going to be more difficult. So you want to understand how you got there. So you made some mistakes, and those mistakes led to an action that isn't so easily changed or undone. He cheated. And we're going to come back to that in a minute. We're going to recap the reading because we need to cover that some more now, because now we're starting our step 8 list, just the beginnings of it. And then we're going to come back to this list again, and we're going to develop that some more. Just wanted you to have an opportunity to see what's going on from a sponsor's perspective right now. Just kick back as a sponsor, and you're hearing your sponsee, and you're educating them. And my experience is the more you can educate something, the more you understand it yourself. So now let's come back to that very reading that I just did, only we're going to come back earlier. I said the last time, this is a mastic key, this reading, and it applies to various sections. So let's now look at it in the perspective of column 4 and 5, which is done differently than columns 1, 2, and 3. So now we'll start back at the beginning, page 79 or maybe 66. So we turned back to the list, for it held the key to the future. We were prepared to look at it from an entirely different angle. That's the attitude adjustment. Now we're changing. We're not looking at our resentments anymore. Now we're looking at what part we played in the process. We're looking at our mistakes. We're starting our 8th step list, the harms done on to others. We began to see the world and its people really dominated us. All this resentment, all this baggage, how you were affected, not maybe necessarily in control of your life. And some of that depends on who and what. And we're going to cover that more. You're coming from an alcoholic perspective, a codependent perspective, a survivor perspective. There's differences, and those differences are going to matter. In that state, the wrongdoing of others, fancied or real, imaginary or real, had power to actually kill. How many wars have we fought over stuff? How could we escape? We saw that these resentments must be mastered, but how? So we're seeing for the first time these resentments had the power to kill. How can we get out from underneath them? You just don't, I just let that go. We could not wish them away any more than alcohol. So they held on to us just like the alcoholism, or just like the other problems, whatever that problem is for you in step 1. This was, of course, we realized that the people who wronged us were perhaps spiritually sick. So other people have hang-ups and issues too. Though we did not like their symptoms and the way they disturbed us, especially if you say, buy me a 6-pack and a pack of cigarettes, and they say no. Excuse me. They, like ourselves, were sick too. It's a matter of interpretation sometimes, and we're going to sift this stuff out. That last example wasn't necessarily the best, but anyway. We ask God to help us show them the same tolerance, pity, and patience that we would cheerfully grant a sick friend. So we've changed our perspective. We see that others are having issues too, and how can we be more helpful and less critical? When a person offended, we said to ourselves, this is a sick man. And look at step 10 is going to help you address things like this in the future. Hopefully, in the future, you learn more how to be able to address this stuff in the moment so it doesn't get all carried away and then you're all hopped up down at the bar or, whatever the case is. How can I be helpful to him? God save me from being angry. Thy will be done. If you can't do anything else, take a moment, pray to God, maybe kick up to step 11 for a second, a little prayer and meditation, right? To anything to, if you need to move out of the moment for a second, to just try to not let it build. We avoid retaliation and argument. Now, why is he saying that? Because we're just making a list here, right? How our mistake and what part we played. Because there's a natural progression here. All of a sudden, you figure it out that, oh, yeah, I made a mistake. And then I cheated, and let me head on over to the wife and say, I'm sorry, I cheated on you. Well, one, maybe she doesn't know, and you just blew the marriage. Maybe she does know and has questions. Oh, who'd you cheat with? Your sister. Oh, well, that's going to go well. Or some guy down the way, right? I mean, there's some complicated things that come up. We're just getting started here. So at minimum, let's avoid retaliation and argument. We're not trying to make any amends just now. But you know what? You can always just stop cheating for now, right? You can try to make things a little better for now. We're just scratching the surface, trying to understand things. I'm just trying to give you a couple of exceptional examples of how things could go bad quickly if you think it's time to go race off and present an amend. It's not time yet. We got a long way to go. Give it some time. But stop hurting others if you can do that. We wouldn't treat sick people that way. If we do, we destroy our chance of being helpful. Try not to spoil a later opportunity. We cannot be helpful to all people. It's the way it is. But at least God will show us how to take a kindly and tolerant view of each and every one. So we're trying to see ourselves, see other people in our lives, and maybe others in the world a little differently. If try not to be a part of the problem. Try to be a part of the solution. If you can't be a part of the solution, at least try not to be a part of the problem. Then, now, column 4, referring to our list again, putting out of our minds the wrongs others had done us, we resolutely looked for our own mistakes. Where had we been? Selfish, dishonest, self-seeking, and frightened. Now, there's other words that I've put in there I'm going to develop. Though a situation had not been entirely our fault, we tried to disregard the other person involved entirely. Again, just trying to look at ourselves, what part we played. Column 5. Where were we to blame? The inventory was ours, not the other person's, not the other man. When we saw our faults and listed them, we placed them before us in black and white. We admitted our wrongs honestly and were willing to set these matters straight. So for now, we're just trapping what we did. We're not trying so much right now to get into who or formulate any of that. So then we're going to look back a slight bit here in column 4. Notice that the word fear is bracketed alongside the difficulties with Mr. Brown, Miss Jones, the employer, and the wife. This short word somehow touches about every aspect of our lives. It's not an easy word to see or understand at first glance. It was an evil and corroding thread. The fabric of our existence was shot through with it. Fear, I'm not going to get enough, afraid of somebody better, getting better. There could be just natural fears we pass on to our children. I covered some of that description last time on the fears. There's a whole host of fears. Do your best to define all aspects of fear and how it might drive you. And we'll get into that in step 5 more also. I'll do a better job of clearing that up. It set in motion trains of circumstances which brought us misfortune we felt we didn't deserve. But did not we ourselves set the ball rolling? Fear of not having enough. Sometimes we think fear ought to be classed with stealing. It seems to cause more trouble. So that's a big one. So what I want to do now is I want to develop this list some more. There was a couple of more words that I had added to column 4. One was blame, and the other was enable. And I described enable and where that came from in the last video. So I want to target blame. Yes, the word where were we to blame is here, but that's not why I put it on to column 4. There's a little piece in the step book I want to read. Just a little piece. At the end of these whole step 4 process, then we're going to read the step 4 in the 12 and 12, excuse me. So, where other people were concerned, other people are concerned in step 4 and 5. We had to drop the word blame. So, to drop the word blame presupposes you've been using the word blame. Have you been blaming others? Did you play a part in column 4 where you've been blaming everybody else? So we had to drop the word blame from our speech and thought. This required great willingness. Now there's that word willingness again, even to begin. So I believe it's better to first understand how you have been blaming others. And as you understand how you've been blaming others, it maybe makes it easier to see how you maybe were to blame or played a part, setting apart yourself from the other person because it's your inventory, not theirs. So blame, I believe, is going to play a dual role there, and you just apply it as needed. So I want to come back to this book I had wrote in 98, a 12-step guide, and I had developed a couple of examples out of the big book. I'm only going to focus on examples specifically from the big book here, just more developed from a sponsor perspective. And so let's look at the concept of Mr. Brown and told my wife of my mistress. But let's also look at the perspective at the same time. We're going to run it concurrent 2 different ways at the same time here and consider. Let's imagine a scenario where the wife is doing a 4-step, say she's an Al-Anon or whatever, and she's been cheated on and was aware of that. So the alcoholic. So we had this other words that we had developed, right? I'm going to share this with you all at the end of step 4 in a PDF. But for now, I want to consider more of column 3. So told my wife of my mistress, or my husband was cheating on me, right? So on the say cheater side, what else maybe did it affect? Maybe it so if he suddenly he knows he's been cheating and that's out in the open, and maybe that affects his pride. Lust, maybe. Hey, gluttony, consuming in excess. He's got a wife and a girlfriend. Envy could have. It depends on the circumstance. I'm just throwing some ideas out there for you. He's probably feeling remorseful. Did unhappiness play a part? It could have. Jealousy? Maybe. Was he doing it out of revenge? Uh, was he feeling self pity? Maybe. Extremism? Wife and a girlfriend? Hey. What fits best for you? What can help you most describe what's going on? Trap the door to articulate later with your sponsors what's going on here. Guilt. Uh, Probably some guilt there here. Um, self self-loathing. Maybe strong feelings of hatred or dislike for oneself. A liability. Was he self-justifying? Maybe. Any humiliation now. So now let's look at it from say her perspective, and we'll assume she was home glowing with purity, and just for the perspective of this. So certainly it likely affected her self-esteem, security ambitions, personal relations, uh, acceptable sex relations. Probably not hidden. If she wasn't out cheating, it wouldn't have affected hers. It probably affected her pride some. Anger. She's angry at him, and it probably made her, but this act, more angry. Um, Certainly unhappiness, jealousy, uh, some worry, along the way. Maybe she wasn't sure, or worrying about the marriage, worrying about herself, children. This is an example of a marriage. It can be other examples. You just make the translation. Certainly, in this case, assets can come up, but in a different way. There was an example there where she wants to put the house in her name. So, in that context, uh, maybe some humiliation going on there. Now, let's hop over to column 4 and build that a little bit. So, he was likely selfish, dishonest, self seeking. Fear, no doubt, played a role. Blame could have. We don't know what the circumstances were. And maybe he was being enabled in this process for her. It depends on what's going on now. She just simply has to honestly ask: was she being selfish in any way? Withholding sex? We're not going to get into that stuff just now, but we'll get there. Was she being dishonest? Was she self-seeking? Fear, I would imagine, definitely played a role. Uh, was there a blame game going on? Was she enabling? And in this context, I would say he cheated. She was a victim. In that context, again, we're just using some sort of a context to understand what was going on. Now, there's other people that might be doing a list. This is an Alcoholics Anonymous list, so there's some things. Survivor, for example, there's some questions. What part did you play and stuff? There's nothing the matter with the question. Just see it for what it's worth. You may not have played any role in a certain process. Maybe something happened when you were younger, and so maybe you were just identifying yourself in that in column 5 as a victim. And it's important so that your mind doesn't play tricks on you, so that you can see the questions. Maybe in that context, the question doesn't quite fit, but in other areas, it's likely you weren't glowing with purity in all areas of the old life. So let's use just another example just to see across undeveloped. And I'll show you this. In 98, when I wrote this book, I didn't consider that additional information. So, and if I can show you this just to show you what I'm looking at. So this was column 1, column 2, column 3, column 4, and you'll notice I didn't have a column 5 then, but I didn't see it. There's column 5. There's that cheated. I just didn't see it back then. So, and I didn't see the other words that we're considering now. It's extraordinary what I've learned in the last 20 years since then. So let's use another example specific to what was out of the big book. My employer was unreasonable, unjust, overbearing, threatens to fire me for drinking and padding my expense account. The developed version, probably self-esteem, security, ambitions, personal relations, I'm sure pride, and if we went down the list, we could find a whole lot of others. So, because there was just a big book format at one time without the step book before the step book came out. And I'm seeking as best I can to put the step book also into play, because it's not easy to understand that the step book deepens and broadens. The step book in itself wasn't intended to be the directions for a step 4, and when you do a step 4 out of that only, you miss much. In step 8, you miss a lot. Anyway. So, column 4, okay, he was selfish, dishonest, self-seeking, frightened. Maybe some blame going on, but maybe he was blaming the company. And so what would column 5 have looked like in that context? Well, his mistake was he was drinking on the job, and he spent company money on himself. So those are, for now, don't drink on the job and don't spend the company money, assuming you still have a job. So that's going to complete our resentment list, 5 columns. So, and really it's resentment, step 4, and it's beginning, step 8. And from here, we're going to set this aside. And in the next video, we're going to start our next list. Wasn't it much easier when we could just hang on step 1 or 1, 2, and 3 and all this work? This is where the recovery is happening so that you can live a life and the people in it. This is where the personality change happens. This is where you understand yourself. If you want to understand God, understand yourself first. You'll see far clearer into that world, and it will empower you in ways that you never imagined. You're straightening the lines, taking a maze out of the process. Thank you very much, and have a nice day.
If you found this video helpful, please like and subscribe. Ring the bell to be notified when new content is added. Also, you can support the channel 12-Step Guide with Troyo by donating through PayPal to hsworldservice@yahoo.com. In Step 4, we are laying the groundwork and planting seeds for the 9th step promises. Those promises are: we are going to know a new freedom and a new happiness. We will not regret the past, nor wish to shut the door on it. We will comprehend the word serenity and know peace. No matter how far down the scale we have gone, we will see how our experience can benefit others. That feeling of uselessness and self-pity will disappear. We will lose interest in selfish things and gain interest in our fellows. Self-seeking will slip away. Our whole attitude and outlook upon life will change. Fear of people and of economic insecurity will leave us. We will intuitively know how to handle situations which used to baffle us. we will suddenly realize that God is doing for us what we could not do for ourselves. Keep moving forward. It's worth the effort,